Hello, welcome to Manhwa Nuna. Today, we will be recapping the manhwa called Dobermans. Please like, comment, and subscribe to help the channel grow. Enjoy. The story begins on a rainy night at Irin's funeral. People talk quietly among themselves about her family. Irin's mother had passed away not long ago, and her sister, Sarin, looks worn out and frail from all the stress. On top of that, Sarin is taking in Irin's seriously sick son, Hayan, even though most think it's a bad move. To make things worse, she's also stuck with her mom's debts. A few days later, Sarin boards a flight, her mind racing with memories. She recalls how Irin always said she had a knack for making the worst choices and warned her to stay far away from one particular man. But now, Sarin believes finding this man is her only chance to protect Hayan, so she sets off for Eden City. Eden City is the kind of place no one wants to end up, a dark pit of drugs, gambling, prostitution, and shady dealings. People say once you enter, there's no way out. Sarin stands outside Hotel Eden, staring at it with a mix of dread and determination. She pulls out a photo of Irin and Hayan, questioning if she's being completely reckless. A security guard spots her and tells her to stop loitering. She apologizes and walks away, but the guard mentions to his colleague that she's been lingering around the hotel for 3 days now. They speculate, maybe she's a gambler, maybe she's in trouble, or maybe she's here for the boss. As Sarin trudges down the icy street, shivering in the bitter cold, she spots a man slumped on the ground, clearly drunk. She can't help but stare, lost in thought. That moment of distraction costs her, as she slips on the ice and nearly faceplants. Grabbing onto a nearby lamp pole to steady herself, she quickly realizes her bare hand has stuck to the freezing metal. Muttering about her own stupidity, she struggles to free herself. Her frustration grows when a sleek car drives by, splashing icy water all over her, a golden-eyed, strikingly handsome man lounging in the back seat. Wet, cold, and utterly exasperated, Sarin thinks about how she spent her entire budget recklessly chasing after hope in Eden City. What am I even doing? She wonders. The car stops, and the man steps out, casually asking if she's alright. She brushes him off, saying she's fine, but he offers to pay for her laundry. Sarin sighs, and yanks her hand off the pole, only to injure herself in the process. She winces, but still insists he leave her alone. Instead of leaving, he calmly asks how he's supposed to walk away. That's when she looks up properly, and freezes. The man standing in front of her is Owen, the very person she came to find. She can't believe her terrible luck at running into him so easily. Owen pulls out some cash, offering it for her laundry. Sarin hesitates, recalling Irin's diary warning her to avoid this man at all costs. Irin wasn't exaggerating, this man radiates danger. When Owen tells her to stretch out her hand, Sarin hesitates. He's clearly not leaving until she complies, so she reluctantly offers her uninjured hand. But he smirks and pulls the money back, silently demanding the bleeding one. Her heart sinks as she realizes what he's after. Trembling, she extends her injured hand, and Owen smiles, saying good, as he places the money in her palm, which makes her think that he speaks like he is coaxing a dog. Eden City bends to Owen's rule. He's the devil, who rules this place and buys people's pleasure. People whisper that he feeds the bodies of his enemies to his Dobermans, earning him the chilling nickname Doberman Owen. After Owen leaves, Sarin heads straight to the casino inside the hotel, determined to test her luck in this city of chaos. She slams the blood-stained money on the counter and coolly requests a $500 chip. Inwardly, she debates whether she should cut her losses and go home or try to find Owen again. Deciding to leave it up to fate, she takes her chip to the roulette table. The dealer calls for bets, and Sarin hesitates, unsure where to place hers. Just as she's about to decide, a man bumps into her, causing her chip to slip from her fingers and land on number 11. The man smirks as if amused and quickly places his own chip down. Before Sarin can react, the dealer announces that no more bets are allowed. As the roulette wheel spins, Sarin silently prays for the ball to land on 11. When it does, her heart leaps, until the man beside her bursts into celebration, loudly claiming the win as his. Confused, she insists it was her chip on the number, but the man sneers and says she was careless, letting her chip fall while he placed his. She looks down and spots a $500 chip lying on the floor. Realizing what just happened, her blood boils. She accuses the man of swapping her chip and demands they check the CCTV footage. But before she can escalate further, another man steps in, warning her to let it go unless she wants to end up dead in the streets. The second man calmly explains that the one who stole her win is a member of the infamous Red Mafia. Meanwhile, the thief laughs mockingly, suggesting she bet with the chip she dropped. Sarin feels the sting of her injured hand and tears prick her eyes as she calculates how much money she just lost, the fortune that could have changed everything. Overwhelmed, she crouches down to pick up the discarded chip, her mind swirling with frustration and helplessness. But her thoughts are interrupted by the sound of chaos erupting behind her. She turns just in time to see Owen slamming a man's face into one of the casino machines. He says that if the man wanted to rig the game so clumsily, he shouldn't have started it in the first place. Then, with a deceptively pleasant tone, Owen asks if there's a problem. The thief, now visibly sweating, stammers that everything is fine and even looks to Sarin for support. Owen's sharp gaze shifts to the chip, noticing the faint smear of blood on its surface. He points it out, his golden eyes narrowing as he grabs the man's hand for inspection. Turning it over, he finds it perfectly uninjured. With an unsettling smile, Owen pretends to let it slide, but from behind him, his bodyguard silently passes him a knife. Before anyone can react, Owen slams the man's hand onto the table and drives the blade through it. Blood spills as the man cries out in pain, while Owen calmly remarks that it seems the chip now rightfully belongs to him, given the blood. Sarin, frozen in place, stares at the scene in absolute shock. Owen then turns to her, holding out the bloodied chip. He tells her to place her bet, but she shakes her head, insisting it isn't hers anymore. His tone grows firmer as he places the chip in her trembling hand, saying it is hers. Gently but firmly, he turns her toward the table, ignoring her resistance. The dealer calls for bets, and Owen leans in, his voice low but commanding, urging her to place it. Sarin, her hands shaking, protests weakly, saying she'll only lose. Owen smirks and asks if that wasn't her plan all along, and how she could squander his kindness like this. The dealer announces that no more bets can be placed, just as Owen guides her hand himself, pressing the chip onto the table. Sarin, too stunned to fight back, watches as the wheel begins to spin, the echoes of the first night in Eden City burning into her memory. The chip lands on 11 again, and for a brief, surreal moment, Sarin thinks she's dreaming. Surely, the same number can't appear twice. Tears sting her eyes as she imagines the life-changing impact the winnings could have for Hayan, medicine, treatments, hope. But just as quickly as the dream forms, the wheel spins to a halt, stopping at 32 instead. Owen doesn't seem fazed. He simply comments, "What a shame," before walking away. He grabs a drink from a nearby waiter, casually pouring it over his hands, to wash off the blood. Sarin watches in silence as his scar-faced bodyguard passes him a handkerchief, which Owen uses to dry his hands with calm precision. As he wipes them clean, he mutters aloud, wondering what kind of fool Sarin could possibly be, before disappearing into the crowd. Despite the humiliation and despair, Sarin thinks she's lucky to have crossed paths with Owen. If she wants to protect Hayan, she can't let this chance slip away. Gathering her courage, she follows him. Owen, aware of her presence, smirks, but says nothing, pretending not to notice. When he finally stops by the elevator, he leans against the open door, waiting. Sarin freezes as their eyes meet. Memories of Erin's warning flood her mind, how her sister always said she had a knack for making the worst decisions. Her instincts scream that approaching Owen could be her biggest mistake yet. Owen, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement, tells her to speak if she has something to say. Sarin clutches her bag tightly and shakes her head, her lips pressed shut. The amusement vanishes from Owen's face, replaced by something colder. With a nod from Owen, his bodyguard shoves her into the elevator. When the elevator stops, Sarin realizes they've reached the 48th floor, the very top. She tries to protest, yelling for them to let her go, but Owen doesn't even glance back. He opens the door to his penthouse, and Sarin's breath catches. The place is overwhelming, dripping with wealth and luxury, and appears to be close to the moon. She kneels as she takes in the opulence, and then becomes still when she hears barking. 3 massive Dobermans come charging toward Owen, completely ignoring Sarin. They skid to a stop at his feet, looking up at him like he's their god. Owen, now seated with one leg crossed over the other, regards Sarin with the calm authority of someone who owns everything in the room, including her fate. The bodyguard yanks Sarin's bag from her hands and dumps its contents onto the penthouse floor. Out spills her wallet, passport, and Erin's diary. Panicked, she yells at him to leave her things alone, but he ignores her. Instead, he picks up her passport and hands it to Owen, who flips it open with disinterest. "Lee Sarin," he reads aloud, his golden eyes flicking to her. "South Korea, huh?" He snaps the passport shut and casually asks where her phone is. Sarin mutters that it was stolen the moment she landed at the airport. Owen doesn't seem surprised. He picks up the diary next, turning it over in his hands. "You won't be able to read it," Sarin blurts out, desperate to keep him from opening it. "It's in Korean." Owen hums, disinterested, before closing the diary with a faint smile. Then his gaze sharpens. "So, what did you come here to say to me?" When she stays silent, trembling under his piercing gaze, Owen tilts his head and says, "How about I satisfy my curiosity first?" Before Sarin can process his words, he grabs her by the hair and drags her toward the bathroom. She stumbles behind him, panic bubbling in her chest as he forces her to face the mirror. His grip tightens on her chin as he pulls out a razor, and her breath catches in fear. Her heart races as she shuts her eyes tightly, praying for a miracle, for her sister to somehow save her. Seconds feel like hours until Owen's voice cuts through the tension. "Open your eyes." Reluctantly, she obeys, blinking at her reflection. Her bangs, the ones she always used to hide her face, are gone, chopped off. For the first time, her mismatched eyes stare back at her, one gray and the other one black. "Pretty," Owen murmurs. Sarin feels a tear slip down her cheek, and to her surprise, Owen gently wipes it away. His lips brush her ear, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I don't usually make offers like this," he says. He licks her ear and asks her if she will be interested in working for him. He raises her dress a little as he asks her if she likes dogs, and says his dog walker recently quit. She nervously asks him what will happen if she refuses. He grabs her face, saying he prefers smart dogs, sliding his leg in between hers. Sarin nervously replies that she likes dogs, and Owen, clearly amused, lets her go. He tells her she's now in charge of them and leaves without another word. When she steps out of the bathroom, Yuri, Owen's bodyguard, hands her the diary. She quickly checks it before asking about her passport and wallet. Yuri calmly explains that they'll hold on to those for her. Sarin, shocked, protests, but Yuri ignores her and tells her to follow him. He leads her to a room and opens the door. His cold demeanor leaves no room for argument as he orders her to enter. Confused and frustrated, she complies, sitting on the floor as her mind races. She mutters to herself that Owen must be insane. Opening the diary, she speaks to Irin in her thoughts, saying she's finally made it to Owen. She reflects on how much she relied on Irin, her other half, and wishes her sister had written more about Owen. If she had known even a fraction of what Irin knew, she never would have come to this city. Sarin resolves to tread carefully, knowing Owen's dangerous nature could easily put her life at risk. Elsewhere in the penthouse, Yuri questions Owen's intentions with Sarin. He wonders aloud if she's pretending to be innocent or if she might be a spy, potentially sent by the Russians. Owen smirks and reminds Yuri of his own Russian heritage, brushing off the comment. However, he acknowledges the possibility and orders Yuri to investigate Sarin, tossing her passport to him. Yuri agrees and leaves. Alone, Owen reflects on Sarin's strange presence. Something about her feels off, though he can't pinpoint why. Her demeanor intrigues him, and he decides to let the situation play out for now. If she becomes a threat, he'll deal with her accordingly. The next morning, Sarin peeks out of her room, trying to determine if Owen is gone. Seeing no one, she takes the opportunity to search for her passport. She checks every obvious spot in the penthouse, but finds nothing. Eventually, she approaches a door she suspects might lead to Owen's room. Just as she's about to open it, a maid suddenly appears, asking if she'd like a meal prepared. Startled, Sarin turns to face the maid, wondering how she managed to sneak up on her. Sarin hesitantly asks where Owen is, but the maid only smiles in response. Looking around, Sarin notices other maids watching her closely. Even the Dobermans seem to be paying attention. Realizing she's being monitored from all sides, Sarin backs away from the door, abandoning the idea of searching Owen's room. She retreats, feeling the weight of their watchful eyes, and begins to rethink her next move. At that moment, Owen walks past her in workout clothes, casually patting her head and greeting her with a nonchalant, "Good morning." The maids quickly gather around him, handing him a bottle of water, while the dogs eagerly follow him to his seat. Sarin glances at his sweat-slicked body, thinking he looks like he just finished working out. But judging from the atmosphere, it doesn't seem like he did. It's more like he just did it or something. Owen catches her staring and raises an eyebrow, asking if she plans to stand there gawking all day. Sarin, snapping out of her thoughts, blurts out that she's waiting for her passport, claiming she left some belongings at the hostel and needs it to retrieve them. Smirking, Owen waves her off, telling her not to worry because his assistant will handle it. Sarin, undeterred, points out that he doesn't even know where the hostel is. He responds by asking if she really thinks he wouldn't be able to figure it out, which makes her wonder if he already knows about her situation in Korea, the situation being Hayan. Owen curls his finger, motioning for her to come closer. Sarin frowns and refuses, saying she won't respond to being summoned like a dog. Unfazed, Owen calmly reminds her that she is his dog walker now. Sarin suddenly blurts out that she had an older sister who used to work in Eden City but passed away recently. She quickly adds that her sister was a casino dealer, and she's here to honor her memory. Owen doesn't even flinch, calling her an embarrassingly bad liar. Panicked, Sarin raises her voice, insisting she's telling the truth, swearing it on everything she holds dear. Without breaking eye contact, Owen orders Yuri to verify her story. Sarin's heart skips a beat as she turns in shock to see Yuri already standing behind her. How had he moved so quietly? Owen then calmly orders her to sit down, and when she glances around the room, confused, she realizes there are no chairs available. Understanding his intention, she hesitates before sitting on the floor. Once she's seated, Owen runs his hand through his hair with a smug grin, calling her a good girl. Owen smirks, watching Sarin closely as he says she's in Eden City on behalf of her sister, and it's clear she's especially focused on him. With a playful glint in his eye, he slides a piece of meat toward her, commenting that he knows she hasn't eaten since the day before and needs to take care of his dogs. Sarin reaches out, but before she can take it, Owen forcefully shoves the meat into her mouth. The surprise of it makes her cough and sputter. He tells her that if she had left earlier, she wouldn't be in this mess. Sarin's face flushes as Owen wipes her mouth with his handkerchief. At that moment, Sarin can't help but wonder how her sister could have ever loved a man like Owen, someone so arrogant and cruel. Determined to get what she came for, Sarin demands her passport back, reminding him that her flight is coming up soon. Owen simply shrugs and tells her that's her problem, a response that shocks her. She accuses him of kidnapping her, and he dares her to call the police. When she hesitates, he adds that even if she did, the police would take his money. Knowing she's out of options, Sarin grudgingly asks what she has to do to get her passport back. At that moment, one of the maids walks in holding the dog's leashes, and Owen calmly informs Sarin that in order to get her passport, she'll have to work for it. Sarin stares at the leashes, a flicker of hope passing through her. This might be her chance to escape, to find help. But Owen, with his usual detached demeanor, simply says he'll see her later. Later, Sarin finds herself struggling to walk the dogs. They're fast, too fast, and she can barely keep up. Her feet stumble, and before she knows it, she's on the floor, the dogs still tugging at the leashes, dragging her behind them. She screams, begging them to stop, but they don't. Finally, out of sheer exhaustion, she lets go of the leashes, and the dogs halt. They come back to her, sniffing her as she sits up, catching her breath. Sarin smiles weakly and says, "Hi." Then, in a more hopeful tone, she asks, "Could you go a little slower?" To her surprise, the dogs present their leashes to her, as if offering a truce. She takes them and begins to walk again, this time at her own pace. The dogs follow her more gently, and Sarin, grateful, quietly thanks them, realizing that maybe, just maybe, things could turn out a little better than she expected. As Sarin walks with the dogs, she spots a tree in the distance and briefly considers tying the dogs there and running to the embassy. Just as she's about to take action, the dogs start barking wildly at a car that pulls up in front of them. The window rolls down, and Owen's voice cuts through the air, asking her why she didn't run. In that instant, it hits her, he's been following her the whole time. With a slight sneer, Owen comments that she really looks like a beggar, referring to her ragged appearance. Before Sarin can respond, Yuri takes the dogs from her, and Owen gestures for her to get in the car. She hesitates, but eventually does, and the car pulls away, driving off into the city. As they drive, Owen casually mentions that Sarin doesn't really resemble her sister. He pulls out a picture of Irin and holds it up to her face, comparing the two. Sarin explains that she and Irin are fraternal twins, but Owen dismisses the comparison, still insisting they don't look alike. Sarin then asks him if he remembers her sister, but Owen scoffs and says, "Do you have any idea how many people work at my hotel? There's no way I can remember them all." The coldness of his words stings, and Sarin realizes with a sinking feeling that to Owen, her sister was nothing more than a fleeting moment, easily forgotten. Owen leans closer and holds her face, his gaze intense. He begins to speak about his brothers and how they grew up together, but as they got older, they started to look different from one another, especially in the eyes. He explains that his brother's eyes became clouded and murky over time, while his own remained sharp and clear. Despite noticing the difference, he says he couldn't do anything about it. His words hang in the air, leaving Sarin to wonder what, if anything, lies beneath his cold exterior. When Sarin asks Owen what he's talking about, he simply responds by saying, he is talking about the dogs, and it is a story about his mother and brothers. Then, he changes the subject, asking her if she learned English before coming to Eden City. Sarin answers quietly, explaining that she and Irin learned English when they were younger, desperate to escape the hellish life they had at home. Their mother was constantly suffering under the violence of her stepfather, enduring both physical and verbal abuse. Sarin recalls the day her mother, in tears, told her and Irin that they should never live like she had, that they needed to get out as soon as they could. No matter how hard they tried to run, their stepfather always chased after them. In order to make money to pay for their mother's hospital bills, they had no choice but to go abroad. This is why, desperate for a way out, the sisters worked hard to study English. One day, Irin came back home, glowing with excitement. She had been hired to work overseas at a hotel in Eden City, with a promise of good pay. The sisters celebrated their first real chance at freedom. Irin promised she would go, make a ton of money, and then return for Sarin. They were so happy to finally be able to leave behind the nightmare they'd lived in for so long. Sarin's thoughts are cut off when Owen pulls the car to a stop and orders her to step out. As she exits the car, she looks around, shocked by the place he's brought her to. The building looms before her, and the reality of the situation starts to sink in, leaving Sarin in stunned silence. Thanks for watching. Please like and comment for part 2. Bye.